Hello and welcome to another episode of Not Too Deep. I'm your host, Grace Helbig. Very excited to have Brooke Baldwin on the podcast today. She just ended her 13-year run as the host of CNN's Newsroom with Brooke Baldwin. We talk all about how she got started in news, how you even work your way up in news, how the whole system works. I knew nothing about news, and now I know something. And then what happens when you retire? How do you make that transition? How do you make that decision? One of the things that has helped her out is her new book, Huddle, How Women Unlock Their Collective Power, where she interviews incredible women and extraordinary women, or the right way to say it, extraordinary, ordinary women. I don't know. See, this is why I couldn't do news. I can't speak in a cadence that is consistent or trustworthy. Anyway, Brooke can, and I had such a lovely time talking to her and hearing about a world that I really have no experience with, but I'm fascinated by. So please enjoy this episode of Not Too Deep with Brooke Baldwin. Brooke, I'm so excited to talk to you. I just want to dive in. I have a really burning question. What is your pug's name and how old is it and how did you get it? I'm sorry.
The best first question of any podcast ever. You win, Grace. You win.
I scan your Instagram, I do my internet research, and I have to talk about the things that really catch my attention.
Okay, this is like the shit that matters. I have a pug. He turns 18. He turns 18 in August. His name is Pugsley because I was 23 and thought that was adorable.
It still is.
All these Pugsleys. I bought him. I got him when I was 23, when I was in my second TV job. I was in Huntington, West Virginia. I had just moved out of the fancy corporate housing that is the Ramada Inn off of I-64 next to the Wendy's, where I ate way too many Frosties and hamburgers. And
gorgeous.
I was just like, I was lonely and I'd never had a dog in my life. And I was like, this is it.
Wow.
Boom. Pug.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he'll be able to vote soon, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Like in 3 months.
Very exciting. That's wonderful. I can't believe you have an 18-year-old pug. Holy crap.
I know.
Your pug is older than your CNN career, I guess. Just to make a bit of a segue, one of the more notable things is that you've been working on CNN for 13 years, and you just literally
like 3 weeks for. I've lost track of what day is it? Like I don't even know. I'm away. But yeah, a couple of weeks ago, my last day, April 16th was my last day.
Okay, so talk to me about that. Where does that decision come from? How long does it take to concretize? And who did you talk to about it?
Yeah, I wish I had it was on this day and this was the thought I had and I was leaving CNN.
Yeah.
It was, I think, an accumulation of things and time. And if you look at my journal, I'd probably, thought about what are other things I could do for the last, year or two. And then certainly during the pandemic, getting knocked on my ass, with COVID very early on, April of 2020, and having real moments with myself as I was in my sickbed for a couple of weeks. As I had just finished, doing all these interviews for my book and was sitting in the deep end of just having interviewed all these extraordinary, trailblazing, well-known women and extraordinary, ordinary women, and having that all sit with me, I think it was all of that. And if you read my epilogue, there's a line in there that's something like, I have a feeling that changes may be on the horizon. And that's kind of what I was thinking about. And then it all the book coming out and my leaving CNN was just a total coincidence. You write a book, you figure out a pub date 2 years prior. My contract was up in April. And so it was this thing. And it was a painful thing, to come to leaving family and leaving a home you've known for so many years and really a dream job that I hustled all through my 20s to attain. But at the end of the day, I had to go. And
Yeah.
it's hard to explain, do you know what I mean? Like, have you,
I
any
do.
moments?
I feel like when you decide to pivot in something that has been one really beneficial in so many ways to you, like I'm
Yeah.
sure creatively,
Yes.
professionally, all these things, and to let go of something, take a chance on something that's completely uncertain outside of it, to leave like all of this certainty, especially in the last year, I feel like everyone's having a huge inner discussion about
Mhm.
their relationship with certainty versus uncertainty.
Totally.
And turns out I do not like uncertainty. And so I've been having some deep dive discussions with myself about that. But I think that's incredibly cool and very inspiring to be able to take, initiative in yourself and what your next chapter will be. And I'm sure a big part of that, like you said, was your book. So talk to me about the book now. First of all, for people that don't know, huddling. What is this concept or this phrase?
A huddle is where women are energized by the mere fact of their coexistence. A huddle can be two women. It can be 2,000 women. It can be, where women thrive, succeed, and really just get amazing shit done. Like these are the women you pray with or protest with or sweat with. These are the moms whose back you have, or the co-workers who you're looking out for, right? Where you truly believe like their success is your success. That is a huddle.
And so when did this concept for the book come up for you?
I think the early seeds were planted after that wild weekend in Washington, January 2017, where I was like embedded in the Trump motorcade. So I'm like balancing on the back of this flatbed truck as I'm going down Constitution Avenue, with my eyes on the newly elected president going to the White House for the first time, watching Donald Trump and watching the new first lady and thinking, okay, like, what are the next 4 years going to look like? And as a woman and as a journalist, I was troubled. And then the very next day, I'm back on the clock for CNN. I'm in the middle of the Women's March. I'm surrounded by these like crazy, famous, amazing, trailblazing women, and also just 500,000 extraordinary, ordinary women who all wanted to show the F up that day.
Yeah. Well, I love that term that you use, extraordinary, ordinary women. I think that's really very wonderful.
That's what I call them.
Yeah, it's great.
They are. These are the women whose names you may not know, but they are extraordinary, ordinary women. And so being surrounded by 500,000 women, I just felt like in my bones, that was my like Oprah aha moment where I was like, all right, like this is it. This is the thing that I am meant to be doing. And that was the beginning of American Woman, which was this digital series I did for CNN.com. But it was really like the seeds were planted for Huddle.
Wow. Okay. So then how did you go about writing the book and seeking out the people that you wanted to talk to?
I mean, don't we all have a mental list of if we could invite certain people to a dinner party or whomever? I mean, it was totally self-serving. I was like, okay, I would like to have coffee with Megan Rapinoe. And then like, I want to have a chat with Stacey Abrams while she's in the middle of her crazy that it was happening in Georgia and that she would make time for me, to, Reese Witherspoon and her whole team out in Santa Monica at Hello Sunshine, to like, hanging out with 5 badass, like military veterans, former CIA, congresswomen up on Capitol Hill at like almost 10 o'clock at night. Cause that was like the only time we could all get together. And I was like, should I bring wine? I was like, that's not professional. And I roll up and they're like pouring wine. They're like eating ice cream. And I'm like, oh, my people.
This is Huddle energy right now. It's great.
Yeah.
And it must be nice because I truly have no base knowledge of how the news works, on the inside. But I imagine that it must have been very freeing to make your own decisions on who you wanted to talk to for your book.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was exactly. It was, ownership, choice, freedom. And I got to pick, right? So I knew I wanted to have a cross section. I wanted these women to be diverse. I wanted them to cover various sectors of society and work and sports and everything else. And so that's how I ultimately determined. And then, obviously like the news cycle was super slow the last few years.
Oh my God. I know. That's like when you're 1, retiring, 2, just released a book. And I'm like, how do you have a second in
Girlfriend,
the day for any of this?
I had to write this book. I felt, I was possessed. And
Yeah.
so when you're possessed by something, you make the time. And so
Yeah.
in between like the weeks of covering the Mueller investigation and having panels of politicos on my show, deconstructing what was happening with Donald Trump as the president, on the weekends, I was eating like shrimp and grits with, Black women in Houston talking about becoming judges. But that was, I needed to fill my bucket. And that's exactly how I did it through that time.
Now, if someone, two questions. First is, how has the feedback been since now it's out in the world?
So far, I think it's been pretty good. I mean, I keep hearing from various people, whether it's, I just heard from, Brandy Carlisle just like sent me a note and said it's been on her bedside table. And I was like, hey, I just finished your memoir. Like, are you kidding me? My book is on your bedside table. And, Stacey Abrams to Ava DuVernay to what I love is the extraordinary, ordinary women who I don't know, who reach out to me on Instagram. They're like, I loved it so much. I bought it for like 8, women in my huddle, or like, hey, can you come crash a book club of ours? We're just so inspired by what you're doing and all these stories of these women, and everyone has like a favorite huddle. And so in that way, I'm hoping that it's resonating. And also just lastly, because we are coming out of this pandemic, right? And just how we all want to finally come back together and how we want to do that with intention and not taking that kind of connection for granted. I think that this book is just super timely.
If let's say someone, hypothetically sees it in, the airport bookstore, doesn't know you, doesn't really, hasn't, preemptively known anything about the book. If they pick it up, what's like the one section that you hope they read?
I think if they pick it up and they just start with the prologue, because I think that sets the scene of what a huddle is, why I'm the person who should be telling this story, and what they'll get out of the book. Just read the first 4 pages. Boom.
Cool. I know you are, like you said, not in the United States right now.
I'm at an undisclosed, very beautiful Caribbean location.
You've been kidnapped in the most beautiful looking area.
Yeah.
You're like officially, I mean, like you said, you've been working nonstop, and now you
like
get
20 years.
To take time. Is it hard for you to take a break? Do you feel that like energy every day of like having to do things?
I'm very good at sitting on a beach and doing nothing and then drinking a dark and stormy at 5 o'clock. Let me tell you that was my first 5 days. That was my go-to. I would like wake up with the sun. I'm not even an early riser, but it's just so beautiful here. I was like sunrise, skinny dip, breakfast, read for 5 hours, dark and stormy, dinner, look at the stars, sleep, like a lot of sleep.
Wow.
A lot of sleep.
You're doing a micro eat, pray, love situation for yourself.
I mean,
it's great.
That's like my happy place. But I think as I have been like talking to you and have like kind of one hand in the world and, talking about my book or what's going on, or I have like one eye on the New York Times and I'm like, what's going on with Liz Cheney? And what would I normally be doing if I was actually sitting at the news desk, and how many people would I be talking about? I do still have those thoughts, but I'm also like really trying to, like, I think like the next couple of days really block out, no offense world, but like block out the world and really journal. And, I've had some wise people say to me, like, you need to put some lines on a legal pad and like, what do you want to do? What absolutely do you never want to do? What do you like? What are the must-haves? I need to do some of that and just like sort through the stuff.
Because you're taking time off, obviously, and recharging and kind of like reconnecting to like what it is that you want to do next. Is that what you're kind of figuring that out?
Yeah. I just needed to like get away and take a breath before I like hard charge back into life, whatever and next chapters. Exactly.
Well, I'm curious too, because I love your Instagram because you're just very much yourself on
Thank
it.
you.
There's no like, it doesn't seem like you have a intern doing something for you or posting as you or any of that kind of stuff. I'm curious, about the way that the personalities in the news interact with social media. It feels like obviously it's, exploded. So it's this like pillar of how we share information now. But being able to be yourself on there versus constantly having to report things on there. Did you ever feel like, I guess, a push or pull on like being authentically yourself on social media?
I think that for a while there, I was like, must have lashes and makeup and look like I'm a TV anchor. And then somewhere along the line that started to shift. I started just like, I don't know if it was like hitting 40, and I did this whole 40 things I had to do before I turned 40. And I was just very real and open about it, and how people jumped in on that. And definitely after having COVID, last April, and, I wrote this whole essay for CNN.com, which ended up getting like a crazy amount of attention, which I never in a million years had expected. But I posted this photo of me looking like, I've been in a newsroom for too long, and I have such a potty mouth, looking not well, like hanging over the sofa, looking so not cute. And I think that really resonated. And that was almost the thing that I heard from so many people while I was sick. And I think they appreciated that, like, taking removal of the veneer and just like, this is how I roll. This is what I look like. And, and so I want to show more of that. And I think I also really admire I admire other women, especially who do the same. And don't you think, I think especially then coming back to CNN after COVID, and we were in these, so normally we have these giant studios, and instead, because we were all being safe, we would all each have like what amounted to a fancy broom closet of a studio with one camera. And I would sit there literally like at the very last minute before I'd run up to do my show and like throw on, a proper dress. But I would the bottom half of me would be jeans and clogs, or like jeans and Air Jordans. And I just felt like from the bottom down, it was like, rooted, like this is who I am. And I think just that arc is just, I'm becoming more and more allowing myself to be me. If that lands.
100% lands. I love me. I mean, I've been working on the internet for the last decade. And so I've only known how to dress from the waist up, and everything else on the bottom is just like choose your own adventure. But I'm always curious too, because the news, you have to present yourself in a certain type of way. And so I wonder, like, what are the faux pas, or is there a psychology to the way you present yourself that makes you seem more trustworthy to people? Are there like actual restrictions or ideas of like colors you should wear that resonate with people, or colors you should not wear that don't resonate with people?
I've never been told anything like that. I mean, I think some of my morning anchor friends have been told like to wear brighter colors, but I think that is sort of passe. And I know for my own self, I think there was a time there when like we were all wearing sleeveless jewel toned, dresses and popping off the screen. And that was a thing for a while. And we all wished we had like Michelle Obama arms. And then I know for my own personal like sartorial taste in the last like 5 years, I really just was into like more neutral colors, and I would, wear a color here and there. But in terms of trustworthiness, I don't think the two are linked at all. I think like one is just like how you feel comfortable and how you present yourself. And the other is like physically present yourself. And the other is just like how you present yourself to the audience, and how you ask the tough questions, or how you approach something with that degree of humanity that like, then the audience trusts you, that sort of back and forth.
Well, okay. Building on that, I am a person that truly hates confrontation. So I wonder how you have developed your ability to ask tough questions over the years and not feel, I mean, I know it's in your job description to get to the truth of the matter about things, but I'm curious if that was something that you had to develop, or that's kind of always been within you in your career.
I think that I'm trying to think of like the various confrontational interviews I've had to do, where you do a lot of homework, and you think of all the different ways the person could zig and zag, and how you need to be prepared with pushback and facts and everything else. And you do that just because it's what you have to do. Like it's just the job. I don't think I even overthought it, but I also do know that I'm not one of those people that like gets joy out of arguing on television. I think there are some people who their thing is fighting. And I think my thing is more, tell me like more about the humanity, or making someone feel comfortable and bringing something out in someone that you wouldn't necessarily expect, or asking the question that the audience is, is thinking, like being relatable in that way. But I don't find joy in arguing on TV.
In gotcha moments.
But I don't. But there are moments where I can think, for example, I've covered so many shootings in my career that it did, and I've never been touched, blessed. Like I've never had someone in my family been touched by it, but I've gotten to know so many people, like they're friends of mine. They would text me on the anchor desk when another shooting would happen. They'd be like, hang in there, Brooke. Like, I'm like, you're telling me to hang in there, And so then when I would have a lawmaker on and we have to go back and forth over certain, gun laws. Sometimes I had a hard time, having those conversations. And that is when I found myself really pushing and also just like saying, Brooke, like, keep your cool, man. Keep your cool.
I couldn't do it. I give you so much accolades for it. It is, I would have a difficult time with it. Now, I'm curious, just going all the way back to the beginning, how did you find yourself interested in news? And also, on top of that, I know that when you started your show, it was a bit of an accident that it went on for as long as it did.
Totally.
So I'm curious, how you got started, and then how do you kind of work your way up into that position where you're filling in for maybe just a week and then it turns into 13 years?
Still crazy. It's so freaking crazy. So I graduated University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 2001. I actually never wanted to be on camera. I thought to be a producer. I wanted to direct. I wanted to be the boss, call the shots from behind the scenes. And then another story for another time, that changed. This is my senior year in college. And so I graduated and I worked in Charlottesville, Virginia. It was my first TV station. So for people who don't know, so there are 200 TV markets. Number one is, New York City. 200 is tiny town, Alaska. And I landed at market 192. And where 5 people were watching me on TV, which was awesome. So I could fuck up and it wouldn't matter, And so I worked there as a reporter. Then I was promoted to working weekend mornings, which was when my girlfriends who were huddling in big, cool cities were drunk dialing me from their happy hour at 7 o'clock at night. I was going to bed because I was waking up at 2 and 3 in the morning to be a one-woman newsroom on the weekend and, fielding on the phone calls, writing my entire show, producing my show, rolling the teleprompter with my foot, sometimes backwards on accident, and watching all the words go the wrong way as I'm live on TV. But that's when you have to make those early mistakes, you have to learn. And so I worked in Charlottesville, then I moved to Huntington and Charleston, West Virginia, where I got the pug and moved out of the Ramada. And then I moved to Washington, D.C., where I was a reporter and we'd be just chasing stories. And I covered some really hard news there, and then came to CNN in 2008. Because when you're from Atlanta, you grow up drinking Coca-Cola and rooting for the Braves and watching CNN. And so it was a dream to be at CNN. And I moved there having this promise of work as a freelancer, basically working as a contracted employee with the hope of being hired pretty quickly. And I moved there. I remember walking into the building for the first time, all excited. And they were like, just kidding. Great recession. We've frozen all the jobs. Sorry, come back when, things are better. And it was a total record scratch moment for me where I left a perfectly good job and a really nice life in Washington to take this leap in Atlanta. And that's when I, at age 29, moved back into my childhood bedroom because I had no guarantee of pay, thus couldn't pay rent. And I'm living, and it was the beginning of the end of my parents' 40-year marriage. So I had a front row seat to that as I'm not working. And it was it was hard.
Just a little bit of a lot going on.
And there were multiple things happening. And, sometimes life just throws it all at you at once. And that was my existence. And so I was like, damn it. If I've got to have one thing succeed, and it's got to be my career. And so I just kept showing up. I was this gnat. People couldn't get, that was flying all around. They couldn't quite, and I just kept showing up, and I was essentially squatting in a temporary office. And I don't know what these people must have thought of me, and I was like the Swiss Army knife doing, like did a documentary for CNN Espanol back when my Spanish was much better. I was over at CNN International anchoring the international news overnight for Asia at 29. I was at Headline News. Anyway, so I finally convince CNN domestic, CNN US, which is what we all watch, to, let me jump on TV here and there, and endeared myself to enough people to where I started really working a lot. And I was, it took CNN 2 years, but they finally hired me.
That's a crazy ass story. And also just a testament of true perseverance.
Slash a little crazy.
A little crazy, but you need that to be able to get up when you get kicked down. And so, wow, that's very inspiring.
Thank
okay,
you.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I have more questions for you. Surprise,
awesome.
Surprise. We'll be right back with more Not Too Deep.
Not Too Deep with Grace Helbig.
Hi, friends. Grace Helbig here from the podcast Not Too Deep, which you are currently listening to, hosted by me, Grace Helbig. Just wanted to say a couple of things. One, thank you so much for listening. And two, if you are enjoying yourself to such a degree that you'd love to leave us a review on the Apple Store, that would be so appreciated, because again, you are very appreciated for giving us your time, your ears, your attention, whatever it may be. And that was my couple of things. Now back to me. Brooke, I'm going to ask you the two questions I ask every single guest that is on the podcast.
Yes.
And the first is, who, alive or dead, would you most like to throw cold spaghetti at?
Is it crazy? The first person that comes to my mind, this is sort of a serious, is I think of, he's gone, but Osama bin Laden. I just think of 9/11. I think of everything that's happened in this country. I think of my dear friend who's a commander in the US Navy, and I had been over in the Middle East with him. And I just think of, I don't know. My mind went to OBL.
There you go. I don't know that we've had that answer before, but it's a valid answer. Okay, the other question I ask every single guest is to tell us your worst pants shitting story, or like a bathroom emergency situation, but you can only use 3 words or like small phrases to describe the event. So, for example, mine is college jogging front lawn. Yeah, quite a time.
Hold on.
Yeah, you can take your time.
I'm going to say, Cancun.
Okay.
Spring break.
Okay.
Bacardi rum.
That's
all I'm gonna
wow. I would not have thought that. Good for you. You did like an MTV Cancun spring break. Oh,
accidentally.
I mean, honestly, I'm a little jealous. I've never done that, but I always wanted to.
Yeah, I did it. I did it enough for enough of us.
I'm sure. Well, no follow-up questions on that. And now we have a different section of our podcast where it's called Hot or Deep. And you can basically give us a hot take on something if something is kind of, on your mind, or we can give you a topic, or you can choose to answer a deep question that we have prepared for you.
I feel like I could answer that in a wonky way with like what's happening with Republicans and Liz Cheney and the midterm elections, but I'm going to take a deep question from you instead.
A deep question?
Me.
Okay. Yeah. Have you ever felt like a fraud?
Yes. Are you kidding me? I mean, I was just telling the story of being in my late 20s and trying to make it at CNN. And I remember, I was 29 anchoring CNN International. Who did I think I was? Being this authority on what was happening in like global policy or whatever these massive international stories were, that someone put me in that seat and said yes. And I mean, I know me, and I know I did as much homework as I possibly could have. And I had producers who were helping me.
Yeah.
But I felt like a total fraud. I'd come from being this like crime reporter in Washington, D.C., fresh, at CNN, trying to just become a CNN, correspondent. And I'm trying to like make some money, and they're offering me like 2 nights a week. And I don't know who was watching, and like, God bless you for tuning in. Thank you for that. But like, I felt like a total fraud.
I mean, that's wild. The more I talk to people about, the idea of imposter syndrome and, feeling like that, it's interesting and a bit helpful to know that everyone has experienced this in some kind of capacity.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you, at what point during the show that you were filling in for, did you find security in feeling like it was yours, like it wasn't going to be taken away from you? Or was there never a point that you felt that way?
Yeah. I think definitely for a handful of months. So like the guy, I ended up becoming an anchor started October 2010. This guy got fired, and they were like, hey, can you keep the seat warm for a week? And I was like, okay. And then a week turned into 2, turned into 3, turned into 13 years. And I think it probably fully felt like mine, maybe like definitely the first 6 months. I was like, even though they're telling me it's mine, like they could take it away from me. And by the way, I know that they could have taken it away from me at any point in time. So maybe like some degree of that answer is like any day, anytime they could have, but it did feel like mine, I would say, for the last like real like chunk of years. It felt like mine. Like I dare you to take it away from me, Yeah,
because I'm sure and I wonder if this is like a conscious, or it becomes like this unconscious thing, that you develop your style of show, you develop your tone of voice and your message. Did you do that like consciously? Were you testing different ways to present, or testing different stories that you wanted to highlight?
It's funny because on my last day, my team surprised me at the very end of my show. They ran this like best of, for a couple of minutes. And the first couple of clips were of me at that time, like just having started anchoring at age 30, 31. Yeah. And I saw myself just like projecting this voice and like being like an anchor, and that's when, and it's funny because I was just finishing this Brandy Carlisle memoir, and she talks about early on, like recording and mimicking and doing what you think you're supposed to do because it's what you've seen. And I'm sure I did that for the first bit of doing my show, because I thought like, okay, this person dresses this way, or this person speaks this way, and I must do that because I must be successful. And then at some point, it's just like you shed that. Yeah. And I don't think I ever was like, today I'm going to try asking a question this way. It was more like what feels comfortable for me. And a lot of that had to do with the story selection, like what I would be most interested in, I think would make the most compelling television. Those days when I did have those choices over how I could really shape a show or shape an interview. I wrote a lot of the questions for most of my interviews, and with the help of an amazing team, and finally, ultimately just feeling most comfortable being myself. And it's a funny thing. I talk to young people starting out, you hear their voice or their recording track, and it's so put on. And I just say to them, like, try to talk. I mean, you're so good at being just totally conversational, Grace. Like it's like feeling natural and moving. I'm a hand mover and like talking, let's talk to me on TV as though you're talking to someone like semi-formally, you're not talking to like a girlfriend, and maybe it's kind of like your grandmother, but just like try to be at ease. And it's an art, this.
It's an interesting thing. I also don't know, I don't know that I ever made a conscious choice of being like, here's exactly, other than the start of doing this podcast, was there a conscious choice of like, this is how we want to do it? But it just develops over time, like you're saying, like things that feel good and feel comfortable in the way that you interact with people, you kind of like, it stays in your zeitgeist a little bit.
Exactly.
Do you take classes in, forgive me, news school for cadence, for dialect, for talking the certain style of,
There are. I never took one, but I definitely know there are voice and diction classes and journalism schools. And sometimes like I never had an accent. I never tried not to have an accent, even though I'm from Georgia, I'm from Atlanta. It's a pretty big city and we don't all, sound like what you may think we're supposed to sound like. But I do think some people try to ditch accents or speak just a bit more professionally. I think that like I write about in my book how, my grandfather was this Presbyterian minister and he had this bold voice. And there was a moment when I was on a field trip, I was like in the 5th grade and we're all sitting around a table and they picked me to play George Washington. Like, because I have even though I'm a girl, like I have this like booming voice.
Yeah.
It was a big moment for me, Grace. It was a big moment. It set me up for success, baby.
Truly. That probably was a big life defining moment for you.
It was a moment. And so, I feel like I've needed help in other ways and learning. I'm still learning how to do things, certainly. But like, I've just always had this voice. It's funny because I'll be somewhere and I'll look like, I don't really have makeup on. I won't look like a CNN person, but I'll be like ordering fries and a hamburger and they'll be like, Brooke Baldwin, they hear my voice, that's always so cool.
That's very fun. Also, outside of, news and all of that, what do you watch? Do you watch anything or are you kind of like, I'm off TV now. I don't want to look at anything on TV right now.
Yeah, I don't watch a ton of TV. I read a lot of my news. But in terms of fun things I watch, I certainly have watched everything from like Normal People to Bridgerton to The Crown to This Is Us to I'm actually like on a throwback kick of Sex and the City. It is amazing how much that show holds. And I think because I live in Manhattan and it's been just hard during a pandemic, everything's just changed so much. Like I just craved seeing, crowds and in restaurants. And I think because I'm in writing Huddle and this is like this huddle of women, in moving through Manhattan, always having each other's backs. And so that's been, I'm like nearly finished 6 seasons watching that at the end of my day.
See, okay, that's interesting because I've never watched an episode of it. I know, and I don't know why. I try to like ask myself, like, what is it that you are afraid of with this show? And I think it's that I might get too into it if I.
They're bite-sized episodes. It's like 25 minutes. I think that's no, I'm lying. I think it might be an 45, whatever it is. It just flies by. It's so good. And it's also so fun. Just if you enjoy fashion, Patricia Field was in charge of, putting these women in these clothes. And it's crazy to think that they shot it. Pieces. Yeah. It's totally art. And to think they shot it, when was it like in beginning of the 2000s and that so much of the clothes still hold today. And I think also I was watching it in my lonely, living in West Virginia and going to bed at 7 o'clock at night. Like that's when I was watching Sex and the City and like wishing I was living in Manhattan with girlfriends. And now it's this funny, like full circle moment where I'm like, all right.
Yeah, you just wrote a book about like females supporting each other. And now you get to take a vacation after being on CNN for 13 years. So maybe this show really helped you too. Okay. I'm learning all of these things.
Sarah Jessica Parker, thank you.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take one last break. And when we get back, we're going to give some advice. So we'll be right back with more Not Too Deep.
Not too deep with Grace Helbig.
Okay, now this is the section of the podcast where we try and give some advice. Caveat, we are not professionals. So take this advice with the salt and all of that. And here we go. This is from Rachel. And I feel like this is a bit relevant to perhaps some of the things you are experiencing currently. She asks, how do grownups get into new routines? Not sure if it's pandemic related, but I can't seem to get myself into a successful pattern in anything: healthy eating, cleaning, exercise, reading more versus being on my screen. How I can do maybe 6 days tops of anything new, and then I burn the F out and fall off the wagon for at least 2 weeks. Anyone else? I'm this close to making myself a sticker chart with prizes or some shit because I'm desperate. What do you do to get yourself into a new, healthy, productive habit or routine?
I love the sticker chart. I love the sticker chart.
And I
idea.
love a good sticker chart. It's so best of both worlds here. Big fan of both. I'm
would you say?
I agree. That's the thing that stuck out to me about this question is that I'm a very, I like to say that I treat myself like a dog sometimes in terms of that I'm very treat oriented in my productivity needs to be rewarded in some capacity for me to keep up with it. But this is something that I do struggle with a lot. One of my taglines online is like consistently inconsistent. And it's been coming up for me a lot over the last year of like, you know, really it's up to me to create my own routines and patterns and that sort of thing. One thing I have learned is like giving yourself a break a little bit when you aren't as, you know, she's saying that she does 6 days on and then like 2 weeks off. And I think once you know that about yourself, you can tend to like preemptively do that for yourself. Like if you start something with the understanding that you probably won't keep it up because you just never keep up things, like that mentality is going to be self-destructive eventually.
I would say jumping off of that, I would say also like doing the thing Monday through Friday and then letting yourself fully cheat on the weekends. So it's not like whether it's working out or food or meditating or whatever. So it's not like, okay, cold turkey, I must do all the things starting today for the rest of my life. Like, let's be realistic. And I also love your idea of treating yourself. Like treat yourself more often than you think you should. Like you're worth it.
100%. I also think, like what you're saying, that if you were to give yourself like a month to try to maintain something, whether it's like eating healthy or, you know, a new hobby or learning something, a language or whatever, if you just say, I'm just going to do it this month. And then by the end of the month, if you've done it, I've heard from people that are successful at this, that it usually continues without much effort after that.
Yeah. Love it.
Are there any hobbies that you're looking to get into now that you have all of this free time, or not all this, some freer time?
I think I'm a huge traveler. Like I used to love being on planes. I'm my happiest version of myself when I have like a plane ticket in hand, you know, or a destination. Like when I go to my Delta app, if I have nothing, I'm like, oh, and so, you know, we've all had to become accustomed to that, right? During the pandemic. But like the first second I got my vaccine, I was able to go to Atlanta and see my family. And then like, know, it was like peace to the BVI. And so I think like really having a minute to finally see my Huddle, see the ladies in my life. And really not just like not like a 3-day visit, but since I do have time and I don't know how long I'm going to have this time, like I want to be with them for a solid 7 days if possible. That just feels like luxurious and naughty, and it shouldn't feel naughty, but it does.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm with you. I used to travel all the time, and now I feel like I have to relearn all of the tool sets that I have built up for traveling with ease rather than with like paranoia that I'm not doing something correctly.
Totally.
Brooke, this has been so fun. We've reached the end of the podcast, but before we wrap up completely, we like to give our guests a little token of our appreciation. And it's a personalized horoscope from us to you for making time for us. And I believe Melissa might be able to send you yours in the chat if you'd like to read it out loud for everyone.
Okay. Dear Cancer, crab of the stars, as Jupiter enters Pisces later this week, you'll be in the right space to rediscover your true potential. And if that true potential is just chilling with your old AF pug with a strong glass of Moscato, that's fine. You've worked hard enough.
Yeah, or dark and stormy, whatever your drink of choice is. Thank you so much for all the conversation. This has been so lovely. Where can people buy the book or see you in conversations about it or find you online if they don't know?
Yeah, I would say 2 places. If you want to learn about me and the book and all things Huddle, go to huddlethebook.com. And I would love to have you follow me on Instagram. It's at Brooke_Baldwin. Brooke with an E. Awesome. Grace, thank you.
Thank you. This has been so lovely. Go get the book, guys, and go follow her new adventures and see what she's up to. And we'll see you guys on another episode of Not Too Deep. Goodbye.
Too deep, too deep, too deep. Not too deep with Grace Helbig.
Not Too Deep is a production of Grace Helbig Incorporated, producer Melissa D. Montz, edited by Shireen Lani Yunus, post-production sound by Chris Henry, and an extra special thanks to Flula for the theme music.